Assalamu alaikum, and to me, it's been a long time no see. I have not been recording for the past, maybe I'd say 4 days, or maybe the last time since I posted during this time I'm recording. And that's because, if you guys are unaware, we're in international break, right? So all the players, or not all of them, but some of them who got called up to represent their national teams, they're playing for the World Cup qualifiers, right? Majority of them are. And that's where we are right now. So there's no club level games. There's no games going on with Real Madrid specifically, since I only talk about Real Madrid. But the video I did want to focus on, right? Based off the title, you've seen it, right? The problems with Real Madrid this season. And now the reason why I'm putting it in quotation marks is because people, especially the media, especially the journalists, right? They're so quick to name drop Real Madrid. The way they're mentioning them in their posts, the way they're mentioning them in their articles, the way they're mentioning them in general, whenever something, it doesn't have to be small, right? But whenever it is small, whenever it is big, they have to exaggerate it and make it sound like it's something that's out of this world, that no club should have ever been through this type of, I guess you would say, little bump, right? But let's talk about it. I just wanted to talk about Real Madrid's season as of right now. So as of November 13th, 2025, I want to give you my intake on Real Madrid, what has been working for them, what has not been working for them. I want to talk to you about Vinicius Jr. I want to talk to you about Mbappé, and especially the main man, of course, who is Xabi Alonso. So let's get into it. And the first topic I did want to talk about is a negative thing, I guess you could say, and it is a slack, right? It's the slacks in Real Madrid. And let's start off recently, right? We drew against Rayo Vallecano. We lost 3 points, and Barcelona, who is now sitting at second place, is catching up to us slowly but surely. They're 3 points away from us, and to be fair, it is not a good look for Real Madrid. Playing a game against Rayo Vallecano, right, especially when it's away, and especially since they also managed to draw against Barcelona before us, we headed into this game and we kind of came to the conclusion that these guys are not the guys that you want to slack on, because they're especially when you're playing at their home stadium with their crowd and everything, what's going to happen, right? But that's not the only case. I'm not here to break down that match. I'm here to also mention the loss as well against Liverpool. And the thing is that, yes, we've had a couple of slacks this season, especially against Atletico Madrid, especially in the Club World Cup against PSG. I'm not trying to cover this whole thing up. That's not what I'm trying to do. Real Madrid are not perfect this season, and I agree with the media in that aspect, that we're not perfect. There are still downfalls to our season so far. But the thing is that I'm not trying to, by the way, give an excuse, because I'm holding Real Madrid to this high standard, and I'm going to get into that high standard. But at the same time, I don't think that it's fair holding Real Madrid at a high standard this early. And yes, we're in November. We're almost halfway there for the season. But to judge them early when Real Madrid is still sitting number 1 in La Liga, right? To judge them early when Real Madrid is still in the top 8 in the UCL table. They haven't lost a trophy yet this season, right? They're still competing for all trophies. It's not fair for Real Madrid. Now, yes, in my match previews, and you guys can go ahead and watch them, I did criticize Real Madrid, because you do have to criticize your team in order for them to do good, And I'm just a fan, like I said, but I'm sure Xabi Alonso criticizes his team even in a victory. But it just depends on how you handle those losses. For example, we lost against Liverpool, and then we drew right after that against Rayo Vallecano. We had, for example, Barcelona, who struggled and drew against Club Brugge, I believe that's their name. But then they ended up winning this weekend in La Liga. Their last match, I forgot who it was against, but they ended up winning, and they closed down the point between the first place. So it just depends on how you handle the losses. And I feel like Real Madrid, I don't know what happened against Rayo Vallecano. I don't know why we couldn't even score a goal, but we didn't look like we learned anything against Liverpool. And I think that's where the criticism should be, but not to the point where you're trying to say Real Madrid is like, that's it, they're finished, and all these negative medias and journalists are trying to say all these negative things. I don't think it's fair. And I've been a huge critic about the board, especially Perez, looking at results. So, for example, the 23-24 season, since that's kind of the season where I kind of started coming back to watching football, there was a lot of issues with the way Real Madrid played. And that didn't matter to Perez as long as we got the results. Winning the UCL, winning La Liga, winning whatever. That's what mattered. But you have to look at the bigger picture and you have to look into how we're winning those things. So if you look at the performances, it's different compared to how, for example, Barcelona succeeded last season, right? Where they won those trophies. They succeeded in the last season, but the way that they won them was kind of scary, right? Winning by 5 goals, 4 goals, multiple games where they scored multiple goals. But then you have us who score only 1 goal, win by 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, That's the biggest critic that I have. And to be honest, especially this season against big teams, we have not been doing good. We beat Barcelona, but it was only 2-1. And, to be honest, we did do good against them because if you look at the stats and everything, like we managed to stop them. And Xabi Alonso really planned that very well. But at the same time, that shouldn't be the final outcome because Perez seeing 2-1, as long as we got the win, I don't think that matters to him as long as we got the win. But for me, I feel like performances really matter a lot. A lot. It matters so much because if you look at the way Real Madrid, for example, played against Kairat with all this confidence and everything, right? Obviously, they're a smaller club. But when you saw the way we played against them, and then when we went up against Liverpool, when we went up against Barcelona, when we went up against Rayo Vallecano, that confidence was not there. And that is where the problem is with Real Madrid so far, is that they have to figure out, and what I mean by they is Xabi Alonso, and I'll get to him in a minute, figure out ways to have that confidence in those other games, especially in the big games, because not every game is going to be a big game, but we have to treat it as if it's a big game and treat it as if every point matters, especially if we're playing in La Liga and especially if we're still in the group stages in the UCL, right? It really matters, and that's just the inconsistency of Real Madrid. Now, another problem I did want to bring up that people are saying that this is a problem that's going on with Real Madrid, this and that is true. I agree with this one. When Rodrigo doesn't start, when Endrick doesn't get minutes, when Xabi Alonso is not making these rotations, that just does not make sense. The biggest example I have is against Rayo Vallecano. Why did Brahim Diaz start over Rodrigo? Yes, Rodrigo plays better on the left. Okay, we never disagreed with that. But then you start Brahim Diaz over Rodrigo on the right, where Rodrigo has played there for multiple years and seasons, and you are still not going to start him, which doesn't make sense considering how he played very well 23-24 season. Last season he did all right. I'm not going to say he did better, but he did all right. And now even under Xabi Alonso, whenever he does come on and play for Real Madrid, especially on the right wing or even on the left wing, he does do his part. Yes, he hasn't been on the score sheet, but you could see the impact is there. You could see the way he attacks the box. The issue lies on the way Xabi Alonso is rotating these players, because sometimes it's questionable. Even his starting lineup, sometimes we don't even know why he had the starting lineup. Like, for example, against Barcelona, right? Or, for example, against Rayo Vallecano. But there's something in me especially that, okay, I could trust Xabi Alonso. That's what I say to myself. But then once it doesn't make sense, there's no adjustment. And that's another issue itself, right? Rotations and adjustment. Those are two different issues, but they fall in place together. And that's just another issue that Xabi Alonso does have this season. But at the same time, he is limited with all these injuries and everything. But there's moments as well where he subs out Arda Güler, who's been our best player so far in the season, besides Mbappé, right? So these inconsistencies all pile up, and that's, I think, what's building up the whole narrative that Real Madrid is having a bad season, is because one loss could mean a lot, right? Considering the fact that we were undefeated in the UCL, and here comes Liverpool, who are out of form, right? After us, they lost to Manchester City, right? It's questionable. It's very questionable for Real Madrid. Now, here's my final take on everything, right? I've recorded this. So far, it says 11 minutes, but I want to keep talking about what I've been seeing consistently in this season. Let's talk about Vinicius Jr. As we know, this is not the only season where he's gotten criticism, right? He's always been getting criticism. He's always been viewed as this guy who's cocky, egotistical, and provocative, right? But at the same time, I want to, get away from all that. But I don't know what's going on between his relationship with Xabi Alonso. I don't know if it started or stemmed from Barcelona, right? But this recently, by the time I'm recording this, there's a clip going around about Vinicius Jr. questioning Xabi Alonso's substitution, where Vinicius Jr. said something like, I guess we don't want to win this game, or something like that. He said something like that. But the thing is that you guys have to understand that the cameras are always going to be on Vinicius Jr. So obviously, if you're going to watch him for the 90 minutes, he's not always going to be this guy who's not frustrated, especially against Rayo Vallecano. Vinicius Jr., at the end of the day, he's still a footballer, and he is not the type of guy, in my opinion, who doesn't back up his talk. So obviously the whole 10 times, I'll do it 10 times more if I have to, and he didn't. That's a whole nother issue itself. But I'm talking about the way everybody knows his level. If he were to go to any other club, he is starting for any other club, no doubt about it. But at the same time, the media, once they mention Vinicius Jr., that gets clicked. The same as like when people mention Cristiano Ronaldo, right? It is going to get clicks no matter what. When people mention Real Madrid, it's going to get clicks. But if it's a positive thing, it's not going to get clicks compared to a negative. So you guys just can't fall for those media negativity stuff that they're throwing at you, because at the end of the day, if they're not getting clicks, they're not doing their jobs. So anything, if Vinicius Jr. could probably by accident say, I don't know, oh, I hate football, like out of context, it's going to get taken and people are going to put in an article and then they're going to say, is Vinicius Jr. being forced to play football? You guys get my point. Don't fall for these narratives because they're not 100% real, and they are not, and they're being taken out of context. Also, I did want to talk about Xabi Alonso. I did say that he's an inconsistent, especially with his adjustments mid-game. I had to drink some water. Xabi Alonso has not proven himself against these big clubs. This is me being completely honest. Xabi Alonso still has to prove himself, because out of those 5 big games that we've played, right, he's only won once, and the result itself doesn't show that we dominated, right? Because if you look at it, right, if people just post the result, right, 2-1, that we beat Barcelona, right, 2-1. Automatically, that's not going to show that we dominated the game unless people start looking at the statistics and everything, right? But that's besides the point. Xabi Alonso still has to prove himself. He did it with Barcelona. He hasn't done it with those other clubs that we played, PSG, Atletico Madrid. Against teams like Rayo Vallecano where we draw, like, I don't think that's justifiable, honestly. We've played against teams that play the low block. We still can't find an answer to scoring goals. Now, I don't know if that's a player issue. I don't know if that's a tactical issue. I don't know if that's a manager issue. But this can't go on any longer. We're already in November. We're close to the halfway point of the season. Xabi Alonso needs to find an answer, because Real Madrid cannot continue like this. Now, I know that this whole video went from me backing up Real Madrid and everything, but now I'm talking about Real Madrid and how I see them. They've done good. They've done better than expected. Everybody said that. They're first in La Liga. They're in the top 8 in the UCL. What more can you ask? Obviously for more, because I'm telling you, Real Madrid's standards are not the same as any other club, and we have to remind ourselves that. But the reason why I was defending Real Madrid in the beginning of the video is because it's not too early to say Real Madrid is doing bad, but at the same time, it's too early for you to make these conclusions. People are coming to these conclusions, and it's not fair. People are misrepresenting our club, and in my opinion, that's not fair. People are misrepresenting our players. It's not fair. We have to make sure that Real Madrid don't just look at results, because that's probably the main issue in my opinion. When you look at results, it shouldn't be satisfying. That's what it is. It shouldn't be satisfying. Now, am I confident that Real Madrid is going to win La Liga? Am I confident they're going to win the UCL or any domestic cups? Honestly, no, I'm not confident, because I haven't seen anything that boosts my confidence. Yes, Mbappé is doing good. Vinicius, he's doing good as well. Bellingham is back and he's been doing well. Arda Güler has been proving himself. But at the same time, the results against these big clubs that we are going to have to fight against again in the future, it hasn't proved anything to me. If we keep dropping points, if we keep losing against these teams, if we keep struggling, right, it's not going to lead us to anywhere. And that is the main issue. The main issue stems from this. Xabi Alonso has to prove himself against these big clubs. Because if you don't, the journalists, and everybody's quick to type. Everybody's quick to put on these articles and negative stuff about your club and everything, telling you that you're not doing your job, and that's gonna push the board and everything to get you fired. So at the end of the day, Real Madrid is being treated fairly with these standards, but at the same time not too fairly, because it's November and the conclusions cannot be made yet. Let me know what you guys think. Leave it in the comments below. Do you think that Real Madrid are getting criticized fairly? Do you think they're not? Do you think that Real Madrid needs a change? Because in my opinion, they do need a change, and we are so inconsistent. But let me know what you guys think. Leave it in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. Make sure you also share with friends. And yeah, until then, Assalamu alaikum.